Dollar. Dirt on money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack and flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yup, what's good, original crew, man? We're back. We got a new Mr. Ballen for y'all today, man. New Mr. Ballen found footage. Mortality, mystery, finally explained. Time to get the pad. Got the handy dandy notebook. You want to show yours?
No.
She said, I'm not showing y'all this white thing. It ain't got no pop, no flair. It's just a simple pad.
I need that.
What?
I'm gonna bring me one up. This.
No, don't touch my pads. No, please don't.
I'm gonna get one.
No,
down.
You can get the yellow.
I don't want the yellow.
Don't get no. Please leave my stuff alone.
I didn't ask.
Please leave my stuff alone. But
It's not yours.
It is. Y'all know who the pad? What? That's me. Pad game is me. Let a man have his. That's what's wrong, bro. But hey, with that being said, before you get into it, make sure y'all check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go if you want to first support. All you have to do is check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's visuals,
lock it in with a thumbs up.
Dang, bro. Women always want to like. Can a man just have his stuff?
That's ours. We both.
No, ain't no hours. Can a man just have his stuff? Damn.
One will not hurt you.
Yes, it will. Cause that means once I get to my last one, I had one. Now I gotta go get some more. I won't have to go worry about getting some more if you just let me have mine. Alright? You done took out my other pads like this.
I haven't.
You done had about 4 on. Cause you don't do nothing but scrabble in them all day long. Let's go, man. Let's check it out. Let's see what it's about. You ready?
Yes.
Let a man have his pads, man. Dang.
Today's video is about a medical mystery that ultimately gets solved when somebody uncovers some very unsettling security footage that we will play at the end of this video.
In Texas?
But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format,
that's what I'm talking about,
then you
Bob.
come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, please invite the like button to come over to your nice, calm backyard barbecue, but be sure to replace their hot dog with a lit stick of dynamite. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications.
Now,
I thought I was gonna say a carrot or something.
I thought that's what I was finna say.
Maybe like a carrot.
Give him a carrot hot dog and be like, oh, this was so good. Be like, you ate
a carrot?
It was a vegetable hot dog. Veggie hot dog. You talking about dynamite? Man.
That's funny.
So you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
Get a little veggie.
On May 27th, 2022, an anesthesiologist named Dr. Chad Marsden stood inside of an operating room with a nurse, a surgeon, and their unconscious patient. Dr. Marsden worked at the Baylor Scott & White Surgicare Center in Dallas, Texas, and it was his job to make sure patients stayed asleep during surgery and then woke up safely afterward. That day, Dr. Marsden and his colleagues were wrapping up a routine liposuction procedure on a middle-aged woman. The surgeon had just finished stitching up the woman's incisions, and so Dr. Marsden, following protocol, began taking her slowly off of anesthesia to wake her back up again. And so Dr. Marsden turned off the anesthesia machine, which is this big rectangular device that takes the liquid anesthesia drugs and converts it into a vapor so it can be breathed in. And then Dr. Marsden removed the breathing mask from the woman's face. Then he changed her IV from an anesthetic drug mixture to regular saline. And so now that these drugs were not being pumped into her system, she would wake up over the next half hour or so. After that, Dr. Marsden and the nurse and the surgeon took their patient on the stretcher, and they pushed her out of the OR into the hallway and began making their way down towards the recovery room. But as they were walking down this hallway, they bumped into more of their colleagues, another nurse and another anesthesiologist, and the hallway was tight enough that Dr. Marsden had to step aside to let these two pass. And then after they did, and they sort of waved at their colleagues, Marsden, the nurse, and the surgeon continued walking, and as they did, Marsden happened to look down at their patient, and immediately he knew something was wrong. This woman's skin had turned completely gray. Dr. Marsden was totally caught off guard by this. He looked at her vital sign monitor and saw that her blood pressure, which just moments ago had been normal, was now dangerously high. And then, as he's staring at her monitor, her blood pressure plummeted. And then also her oxygen levels fell, and then she began foaming at the mouth. It was clear this woman was going into cardiac arrest, which meant if they didn't act quickly, her heart was going to stop. Now, Dr. Marsden, again, is sort of in shock at how quickly this is happening, but he just jumped into protocol. He began giving the woman chest compressions to make sure blood was flowing to her heart. Meanwhile, the surgeon administered oxygen and blood pressure medication, and the nurse called for an ambulance. The reason she had to call for an ambulance is because the surgery care center was not equipped to handle medical emergencies. It was only for scheduled surgeries. And so if there was a medical emergency, all they could do was just stabilize the patient until paramedics arrived. And that's exactly what Dr. Marsden, the nurse, and the surgeon did. They got this woman stable, and then just a minute later, 2 paramedics came running down the hallway. They took possession of the patient, they put her onto their stretcher, out the door they went, they put her in the back of the ambulance, and they sped off to the local hospital. As Dr. Marsden watched the ambulance disappear down the road, he knew his patient was now in good hands, but he was still very shaken by the whole experience. Because this type of emergency, somebody going into unexplained sudden cardiac arrest following a totally routine surgery, was extremely rare. Meaning, for this to happen even just once over the course of somebody's medical career, to have witnessed something like that, was very rare. But for Dr. Marsden, this was not the first time he had seen this. In fact, literally the day before, a different patient at the surgery care center had also gone into sudden, unexplained cardiac arrest following their routine procedure. So, as Dr. Marsden went back inside and began heading upstairs to the hospital administrator's office to tell them about this latest emergency, he kept thinking to himself how crazy it was that he had just witnessed these 2 unexplained sudden cardiac arrests basically back to back. But Dr. Marsden just thought to himself, hopefully this is just a really bad coincidence. The surgery care center's administrator was a woman named Ashley Burks, and when she heard about this second unexplained cardiac arrest, she knew she had to call a staff meeting. And so that evening, she, along with Dr. Marsden and over 24 other medical staff, doctors, nurses, other anesthesiologists, they met in this conference room in the back of the building. And once everybody was assembled, Ashley began by updating everyone on the 2 patients who had been rushed off to the hospital for their cardiac emergencies, and she said they had stabilized and they'd be okay. But Ashley then said what everybody in the room was thinking, which is sudden unexplained cardiac arrest is so rare, we can't just treat these things like coincidence. Like something specifically must have caused these incidents, and we need to figure out what that thing was. Now, it was possible that the cause or causes behind these incidents were quite simple. Ashley said to the group, the first thing she did was she looked at the 2 patients' files to see if they had specific drug allergies or medical risk factors that might have been overlooked by staff. But when she looked at their files, neither patient had those risk factors or allergies, so that couldn't have been it. Ashley said she also looked for just a common thread between these 2 incidents. Like, were the patients doing something similar? Were they in for similar reasons? Were they in the same room? But no, they were in different operating rooms, going through different procedures with different medical teams. And so there was no obvious common thread between the 2 incidents. So Ashley said to the group that the only reasonable explanation that she could think of, at least at this point, was that perhaps the equipment in the surgery care center had malfunctioned. And so what she was going to do, out of an abundance of caution, was just begin testing all of the equipment in the building. And so Ashley told the group that in the meantime, while she was doing that, the rest of the staff should be extra attentive to their patients and also be on the lookout for potential problems with hospital equipment. Ashley watched the medical staff all nod their heads in agreement and begin sort of talking to each other, and then she thanked them all for being there and told them they could leave. 3 weeks later, on the afternoon of June 22nd, Ashley stood outside the OR in the hallway, looking through a cabinet that contained surgical drugs. Ashley was still trying to find a connection between those 2 sudden cardiac arrests. She'd already checked all the Surgicare Center's equipment, from the anesthesia machines to the vital sign monitors to the breathing tubes, and everything was in perfect working condition. And so now, checking these drugs inside of this cabinet was sort of like her last resort. She'd printed out a list of recent drug recalls and was now comparing that list against all of the drugs inside of this cabinet. And so one by one, she was reading a drug and checking the date on it and comparing it with her list to make sure, they were not carrying recalled drugs still. But after going through dozens and dozens of bottles, there was nothing in their cabinet that was on the recall list. So Ashley still just did not have an answer for why those 2 cardiac emergencies had happened. However, since that staff meeting 3 weeks earlier, the Surgicare Center had not had another cardiac emergency. And so Ashley was thinking to herself, maybe, despite not knowing how this happened, these troubles are in the past. Ashley shut the drug cabinet and walked down the hallway towards the break room to grab her lunch. But the moment she walked inside, she saw a group of her colleagues sitting around a table looking very upset. In fact, some people were visibly crying. And so Ashley walked up to them and said, "Hey, what's going on?" And a nurse told her that one of their colleagues, an anesthesiologist named Dr. Melanie Kaspar, was dead. Apparently, the night before, she had had a heart attack at her home, and her husband had found her and called 911, but unfortunately, by the time paramedics arrived, she was already deceased. Ashley was shocked. She knew Dr. Kaspar, and she knew she was in great shape. She was only in her mid-50s. I mean, she did not seem like someone who might just randomly have a heart attack. But then also, Ashley began to think that she remembered hearing in the last few days that Dr. Kaspar had actually been feeling sick. And so she wondered if maybe whatever illness she was suffering from had something to do with her heart attack. Either way, as the Surgicare administrator, it was Ashley's job to plan staff events like memorial services. And so Ashley told the group, hey, I'll get to work putting together a small ceremony for Dr. Kaspar. 5 days later, on June 27th, Ashley was sitting in front of her office computer ordering supplies for Dr. Kaspar's memorial when suddenly she heard these loud, fast footsteps out in the hall as if somebody was sprinting towards her office. And then a moment later, Ashley saw her door burst open and the anesthesiologist, Dr. Chad Marsden, was standing there and he looked absolutely horrified and he just said to her, "It's happening again." Ashley's stomach dropped. And she jumped up and sprinted after Dr. Marsden, and they made their way to the hallway outside of the OR. And when they got there, Ashley immediately heard the sound of that long single beep of somebody's heart monitor flatlining. And she looked over and she saw one of the doors to an operating room was open. And inside, she saw a surgeon performing chest compressions on an elderly patient. And even from out in the hall, Ashley could tell this man was unconscious, his skin was gray, and he was foaming at the mouth. It was exactly like the other cardiac emergencies that had happened before. Except this time was worse, because that beep, that flatlining beep, meant that this man's heart had actually stopped. And so Ashley just stood there in horror, watching the surgeon perform these chest compressions, knowing that if that didn't work, if they couldn't get this man's heart started again, he was about to die. Just then, Ashley heard the sound of the doors leading into the OR hallway open, and these 2 paramedics came rushing inside, and right as they passed her and got to the doorway leading into where this man was basically dying, Ashley heard the sound of the flatline beep turn into regular beeping, which meant the surgeon who was doing chest compressions had managed to restart this man's heart. And so Ashley was relieved, but by no means thought they're out of the woods yet. I mean, this man clearly is going through a medical emergency here. But the paramedics got the man off the OR table, they put him on a stretcher, and they wheeled him away. And so once they were gone, Ashley, Dr. Marsden, and the surgeon who'd been doing the chest compressions, they all just looked at each other like, what is going on here? Clearly, there is something causing all these sudden cardiac arrests.
No, the reason why I went like that, because I was like, don't tell me another one's happening. You know what I'm saying? And then technically the doctor, what's her name? Casper? Casper? I know I'm saying, I feel like I'm saying
Caspar or something like that.
Dr. Melanie.
Dr. Melanie. Yeah,
Dr.
Dr. Melanie. I think Caspar.
But hers being a cardiac issue as well, that's not a coincidence.
No.
We done had 2 of them. Obviously, we're investigating something. Somebody or whatever is going on took a hiatus, let me cool down, you know what I'm saying? Let me back away from. You just say somebody's just going in for a routine, whatever, expecting to go home like a day or two after going to the hospital, and
because at first I thought, I was like, well, maybe I was wondering, like, was it like some of like the meds or the
when she was in the drug cabinet looking.
At first, like when he was saying it at first, I was like, maybe it's like whatever. I'm trying to think of what the stuff called to like put them to sleep.
Morphine.
And the like any type of meds that they're giving them, even like before or whatever it is. I don't know. But then when she said the doctor also had, I was like, well, she hasn't went on to any surgery. She's just in the facility.
What you said?
So now I'm like, okay, now my mind's off of that. What could it be now? Now I have no clue. Because now it's like an actual staff member is being like.
Could we possibly be putting in people food as well?
But the patient's not.
No. I'm saying whatever we put in the patients, could we possibly be putting it in someone's food and they consuming it? Because they have lunchrooms and stuff too. So I don't know. I have no clue.
Clearly, there is something causing all these sudden cardiac arrests, but still nobody knew what it was. Ashley just stood there for a moment, feeling absolutely sick to her stomach. If it wasn't the drugs, and if it wasn't the medical equipment that caused these sudden cardiac arrests, then what was it? Well, Ashley was determined to find out.
Right.
Over the next 2 months, Ashley interviewed and observed every single employee of the surge care center to make sure they really were following their protocol absolutely to a T. And one after another, through her research, she discovered that they all were. They were doing exactly what they were supposed to be doing. So the cardiac arrests could not be chalked up to faulty equipment, recalled drugs, or human error. And yet, the cardiac emergencies kept on happening at the Surgicare Center.
Wow.
There were 3 incidents in July and 4 more incidents in the first 3 weeks of August. And so in total, that made 10 patients at the Surgicare Center who had all gone into sudden unexplained cardiac arrest. Now, none of them had died, but Ashley knew a few of them had been left with permanent heart damage. People were getting seriously injured on her watch. And she felt like, she can't figure out what's going on here. And so it's just a matter of time until somebody does die from one of these cardiac emergencies. And so she was feeling completely overwhelmed and stressed out and desperate until August 24th, when 2 things happened in quick succession. First, in the morning of August 24th, Ashley received a phone call from an officer at the Dallas Police Department. Okay. And they told her that the autopsy had been completed on Dr. Melanie Kaspar, the anesthesiologist who had died back in June from a heart attack at her home. And this police officer thought that Ashley really needed to know that her heart attack had not been natural. It was actually caused by an overdose of a drug called bupivacaine. So Ashley knew what bupivacaine was. It was a drug that was basically only used in surgical anesthesia. But Ashley had never heard of anybody abusing this drug or overdosing on it because bupivacaine does not make you high like morphine or fentanyl does. It's closer to Novocaine. It's like a numbing agent. And so Ashley told the officer how weird it was, the idea that she had died of an overdose of bupivacaine, of all drugs. And the officer agreed with her. But regardless, he thought Ashley should know because he thought it was possible that Dr. Kaspar had gotten the bupivacaine from the Surgicare Center. And so feeling totally confused, Ashley thanked the officer for telling her, then they hung up, and then Ashley walked to the OR hallway to check the drug cabinet where drugs like bupivacaine were stored. But as soon as she entered that hallway, the second thing happened that day. Okay. Ashley heard chaos break out inside of an operating room where she knew an 18-year-old boy was undergoing what should have been a routine sinus surgery. And so she watched helplessly as the doors flung open and a nurse came running out into the hall to call an ambulance. And then inside the room, Ashley saw an anesthesiologist performing chest compressions on this boy, and another doctor was administering oxygen and blood pressure medication. It was the same nightmare playing out now for an 11th time. But this time, after the EMTs wheeled this boy away to be driven off to the local hospital, Ashley was so desperate to figure out what was going on here that she just couldn't wait. And so she rounded up a couple of hospital staffers that were nearby, and they went into that operating room, and they checked the medical equipment, they checked the drugs that had been used, they searched the floor for anything that might have had something to do with this. I mean, they even searched the trash can. And in the trash, Ashley found something that the second she saw it, it made her blood run cold. She couldn't believe somebody would do something this awful, or why they would do this.
Why you keep looking at me?
I'm just thinking, because now I'm like...
Speak up.
No, I'm just thinking, I'm like, now I'm with you. Or like, is somebody putting something in something? But then I was like, but how would the patients get a hold of it? Because most times, like, before surgery, they, advise you not to, like, eat and stuff like that. Or whatever the case may be. So I'm like...
Oh, no, I was, like, only with Melanie.
Yeah, with her. But then I'm like, it definitely has to be, like, everything has to be tied in together. So now I'm trying to figure out how the patients will be able to... But I know we're about to find out. But I'm just anxious. I'm anxious to, like... I don't know. My stomach in knots, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my body all tensed up. I'm like, what is happening? Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody would do something this awful, or why they would do this. And so she took the thing she found in the trash, and she ran out of the operating room and upstairs to call the police. Minutes later, 2 police officers arrived at the Surgicare Center, and they saw what Ashley had found in the trash. When they looked at it, they knew they had a very serious situation on their hands. And so right away, they roped off the operating room where this 18-year-old boy had been, and they began looking for evidence inside of there. And then also, they began reviewing the security camera footage from the OR hallway. And as they reviewed this footage, they would find something truly chilling going on in that hallway that totally explained all of the sudden cardiac arrests that had been happening inside the Surgicare Center. This is what they saw on the clearest...
What took them so long to want to review the footage? Because one thing I will review, which you won't be able to, I was finna say the drug room, but you won't be able to tell who.
You want me to tell you also maybe the reason why, because you would never like suspect for it to be like one of your
but I always
your
expect
staff.
expect the unexpected though.
True, but I guess like with her, she like sometimes your brain don't necessarily go straight to that. You just want to like rule out everything else.
And you need like outside opinions and
but
thought.
now since they done called her and was like, hey, Melanie, she passed from unnatural, heart attack. This wasn't, natural.
It's a medical induced heart attack.
Yes, this is something else. Thank you. And then with her finding the whatever she found in the trash, then it's kind of like now, okay, something else is happening. Then your brain starts to go to
now
the places that you didn't want
criminal.
to go. It most definitely is.
No, I'm saying like after you find this in the trash, it's criminal. So now on a criminal mindset, we got to look at every aspect. You just can't
rule
assume.
out anything now.
And everybody in the hospital is considered a suspect.
Facts.
In that hallway that totally explained all of the sudden cardiac arrests that had been happening inside the Surgicare Center. This is what they saw on the clearest piece of footage, which was shot 5 days earlier on August 19th. A hospital employee is seen walking down the OR hallway carrying a stack of papers under his arm. He walks past a couple of his colleagues, and he arrives in front of this big metallic device that sort of looks like a refrigerator, and he opens it up, and he reaches inside, and he pulls out a saline IV bag. Now, when he does this, nobody else in the hallway bats an eye, because this is a totally normal thing to do. That metal device was a warming machine where saline IV bags were stored to be used during or after surgeries. At any given point, this warmer would contain a few dozen IV bags, and whenever it got low, certain staff members would restock it. But the police watched this footage over and over again, and they saw this employee who walks up to the warmer was not just carrying a stack of papers. He was also hiding something within those papers, his own saline IV bag. And so before this man takes out an IV bag from the warmer, he takes this hidden one and places it in the warmer as well. So he's basically swapping.
You can see it.
Yeah. Like
You
can see it right here.
Right up against him.
Let me full screen for those who might not be able to see. You can see it right here. Mm-hmm. Within it, you see it's tucked. He knows where the camera footage is. He's trying to hide it
as best as possible, so someone. Yeah. But Yeah, and that's why everything is so random. Like, why though? That's what I want to know. Why?
Employee who walks up to the warmer was not just carrying a stack of papers. He was also hiding something within those papers.
I don't know if you
See him
saw.
tuck it. I could see through the crack.
Yeah, because he's concealing it, and then as he goes in there, he's like, but it's that slippage of the crack. We can actually see something goes in and something comes out.
Carrying a stack of papers. He was also hiding something
And?
within those papers.
Ow.
His own saline IV bag. And so before this man takes out an IV bag from the warmer, he takes this hidden one and places it in the warmer as well. So he's basically swapped one for one. And this was absolutely bizarre because it was not his job to be restocking the warmer. He shouldn't have been putting anything inside of the warmer. And so about 30 minutes after this employee has placed his own IV bag inside of the warmer, a nurse comes out of the OR, walks down the hallway, opens up the warmer, takes one of the warmed up IV bags, carries
one
it
he
down
put
the hall,
in.
goes back into the OR, and minutes later, her patient goes into cardiac arrest. It would turn out that nurse had inadvertently grabbed the saline bag that the male employee had secretly placed just minutes before. And she didn't know that that saline bag is what caused the cardiac arrest. Nobody knew until days later when Ashley is so desperate to figure out why all these patients are going into cardiac arrest that she began searching through the trash, and she would find an empty IV bag, and she would see very clearly there was a little puncture on it, just big enough for a needle. And so after seeing this security footage, the police analyzed that empty IV bag that Ashley had found in the trash with the puncture on it to see exactly what was in that IV that went into the 18-year-old who also went into cardiac arrest. And inside, they found a combination of 3 drugs that when combined are like a biological bomb that will send somebody into cardiac arrest within minutes. They were lidocaine, which is an anesthetic, epinephrine, which is basically pure adrenaline, and crucially, the third drug found was bupivacaine, the anesthetic that Dr. Melanie Kaspar had overdosed on, which caused her to die of a heart attack. And this discovery meant that Dr. Kaspar's death was almost certainly connected to these poisoned IV bags. In the few days before Dr. Kaspar's death, she had been feeling sick and dehydrated. And on the day of her death, she was feeling so unwell at work that, unbeknownst to any of her colleagues, she had taken a saline IV bag from that warmer and brought it home with her to rehydrate herself. But unfortunately, the one that she grabbed was one of the poisoned ones. When paramedics arrived at Dr. Kaspar's home, they found her still with the IV needle in her arm. But at the time, nobody connected her death with all of the cardiac emergencies at the Surgicare Center. Well, nobody except for the employee who was actually poisoning the IV bags. That employee was an anesthesiologist, but it was not Dr. Chad Marsden. It was the person that Dr. Marsden had to get out of the way for in the hallway that first time his patient had gone into cardiac arrest. The man who was doing the tampering was Dr. Reynaldo Ortiz. He was 58 years old, and he had only worked at the Surgicare Center for about a year. And he had flown mostly under the radar there until May 19th of 2022, which was about a week before the sudden, unexplained cardiac arrests had begun at the Surgicare Center. On that day, on May 19th, Dr. Ortiz had allowed one of his patients to stop breathing, nearly killing the patient. And so as a result of that incident, Dr. Ortiz had been placed under internal investigation by the Surgicare Center, and he was facing the possibility of losing his medical license because of negligence. So to try to avoid losing his medical license, Dr. Ortiz decided he would just try to make all the other doctors look negligent too.
Yup. Soon as he said he was in trouble.
He was in trouble. He's like, I gotta find
So-
a way to take the heat off of just me and me alone.
And let it be like the person went into cardiac arrest is something's going on here. So it's not my fault that this person went on a cardiac arrest. There's something's going on here. No, you just, bro, that is so fucked up.
Wow.
And you have literally murdered somebody.
Wow.
Wow.
Dr. Ortiz decided he would just try to make all the other doctors look negligent too. taking the attention off of himself. And so he began sabotaging his colleagues' surgeries by injecting those drugs into their patients' IV bags, knowing it would cause cardiac arrest. Now, none of the patients who went into cardiac arrest at the Surgicare Center died.
Thankfully.
However, Dr. Kaspar, who took that tampered IV bag home with her, did die. And so ultimately, Dr. Ortiz was responsible for her death. In April of 2024, Dr. Ortiz was found guilty on multiple charges, and he is currently facing a sentence of up to 190 years in prison.
Good.
That's a lot.
Good.
If you don't know this,
But
My bad. I pushed the wrong button. There you go.
oh my bad. I said good. I said it's not going to bring Dr. Melanie back, but yeah,
I accidentally muted the mic instead of
definitely deserves it.
Yeah.
Cause what? Are you sick? Yes.
That's
mental.
crazy, bro. For fucking
You are mental.
What?
Cause
Like literally for fucking what, bro? It makes absolutely no sense why, how, or any of that shit. Like I understand, like you was like, hey, excuse me, I'm trying not to lose my license. Yeah, there's no like that's your excuse, but there's no necessarily justified excuse or reason why you should do
you
some
did
shit.
all of that to not lose your license.
Because I guess it was like
to put the to take the heat off of just yourself and like put it on everybody else.
Because he is a doctor, so he's like, so he did something. He was like, all right, this is not going to kill anyone because we have doctors here that will be able to save him, right? So he's like, okay, I can do this and nobody will die. Y'all failed to real. I ain't know that's something that can be done was to allow a doctor to be able to take an IV home, but she took it home. No one was there to save her life. Because I guess what, like, the whole, like, everything he put in there, I guess if you catch it in time, you can save someone so it won't be. But, like he stated, they were these people were left with permanently damaged hearts. Oh, selfish, man. Selfish. Like, literally selfish.
And in the end, you still lost your license because you're doing time.
Shit, I'd rather lose my license than do time.
Like, make it make sense. You did all of that not to lose your license. Or possibility to not lose your license.
But you still in jail time.
And took someone's life. And could have took many more. Doesn't make sense.
Not at all.
So dumb.
Man, good vid though. I
bad
like
vid, good vid, bad vid.
I like these Mr. Ballen videos a lot more than y'all know. The other ones just be like,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying. But I like when we're made aware of like things.
Yeah,
like
I
this.
do. Yeah, I do like that because I don't think I ever heard about this.
Yeah, not at
well,
all.
not I don't think I know I haven't. I've never heard of it. So yeah.
Yeah, but hey man. Y'all spam us up in the comments. Y'all let us know y'all thoughts about it for us in the comment section down below. But until next time, y'all know how it go, man. I do go by the name DJ New Kid. This is
Sierra Nicole.
We are
Kid and C. My mind discombobulated. Okay, come on.
It sound like you choked on your own air.
I don't know. Come on.
I do go by the name DJ New Kid. This is
Sierra Nicole.
We are
Kid and C.
We are.
Peace.
Time to kick it, got a stack and flip for my foes. Dollar,